Hello, I thought it would be helpful if I share with you a slideshow of some more detailed description of how research can help and influence the development of a scene design. And I'll do this by showing you some images from a book titled Scenographic Imagination, and this is the third edition by Darwin Reed Payne, a wonderful scene designer, educator, and author. And also, I'm going to show you some ideas from how I apply this myself in my own designs a little later in the slideshow. But one of the things I think that's so important for what Darwin Reed Payne is stressing in his book is how important it is not only to look at the specific locale that the play is set in, but keep moving out, both as you develop the design and also as you're doing your research. So look at the surrounding area, but also look at that general area and see how things are oriented. I'm going to use from his book an example of the opera Madame Butterfly, which he shows how he developed his design using his research. Madame Butterfly was, or is, I guess, a three-act opera by the Italian composer Puccini, premiered so long ago, more than 100 years. Well, but is also one of the most frequently performed of all the operas. Basically, it's based on a short story about a Japanese girl's ill-fated love for an American sailor. All this, of course, according to Britannica.com. I think it was a good summary of it. But what I wanted to show you is this book that Darwin Reed Payne dug around in. It's a Dover book called Landscape Gardening in Japan. And one of the great things about Dover books is most of them are reprints of books from the past, and they're wonderful sources. And so take a look at some of these illustrations that he got from that book. And notice what he's looking at here. He's got an overview of Japanese landscape and architecture. He's also looking in that book at Japanese houses and the ground plan, and he's noticing the deck that surrounds them, how open the rooms are, how rectilinear the forms. And then there are some wonderful drawing illustrations, and many of them quite detailed. Look at this little well that's here, or fountain, the trees and the shrubs, and a bit of a flag banner feature there. But also, again, here's that same house, but look how open that structure is. Look at the roof line here. So what he did then was to sort of see what the surrounding area might be to this house, that he would need to design for the opera. Notice the little walkway that goes around. He's laid out the trees. And in the opera are all these references to different places and different occurrences that are happening around. And so he has plotted where the harbor is and down the hill. So he's kind of seeing how all this works. And then he goes back into the research further, and he notes some more of these details that he can bring into it. Again, the roof, the porch here, and a bit of trellis, and these various landscaping features. And so then here is his rendering of it. And you can see here's a background with the mountain in the distance and the water and those Japanese tree forms brought into it. Beautiful use of space. And that landscaping just found its way right in here. But notice he's taken it and abstracted it and opened it up for the stage so that it works so well. But you can see these various features that the research fed into it. Here's another example that he uses in his book, this photograph inspired him, with this path and the trees. And so that's what he used as he developed the design for this production of a play called Home. This goes a little bit further and into detail. Again, how the research influences his design. It's for a play called The Caretaker by Harold Pinter, set in an upper floor room in a London flat. And notice the roof line here that he's found as he's kind of begun his research. Now, this is a drawing he's doing of the space, right? What he's imagining this room to be. And this is a sort of a realistic take on it. But as he was developing his design, he was also thinking about wanting to convey something more than just the realistic interior here. He wanted more of the feeling in the play to have, as he says, a kind of a pressure pushing down on these characters, because he found that very much in the play. And so what he did, he removed these walls, left the ceiling there, had the back wall, but look what he's done. He's compressed these walls and made it so the ceiling's even more slanted, which gives that sense of downward force. And then his research image, he got this idea from the slats of the siding here, and probably these stairs and railings. And so in essence, what he created is this sort of slotted skeletal structure with a door at center. Notice how all the lines of the floorboards push back towards that door. And again, the angle, because this is so small here, that accentuates that downward pressure. Also notice in his design, he could just randomly put all the objects around on the floor, but he's thinking much more about how the actors will move in this space. So he makes these different clusters, and it's actually for a thrust stage, so he knows the audience is all around, and this gives these areas to sit. But he's also intrigued to have a little bit more openness here so that the actors can move around, and he's bringing some further elements out into the room, so it's not just two-dimensional. He's pushing further on that. And it's carrying these beams out, but it gives him a chance to hang some elements here. So here's the back wall, that roof line that goes so high, a bit of a window here, so you get a sense of being upstairs and looking out. But notice how the audience is oriented around this thrust stage and how those floorboards push, but also these clusters of furniture. And here's a photograph from the production. And look how great this kind of ceiling element is, this roof line. It puts these slats here and communicates almost this feeling of prison as well. So what I wanted to do was show you some of the research and then how that fed into the design for The Liar. And what's intriguing is the seeming simple design on the stage actually can be quite complex and kind of circuitous to get to it in the end. So here's what the set ended up looking like. It has this proscenium around it, and then these two big gobs of drape left and right, and then all these different swags of drape with two kind of hanging down there in the back, and a cyc, and then this big white floor to play the play on. So I started off looking at other production designs of the show. I was intrigued. Here's a bit of drape, though that I don't think really was what got me thinking about it. I did like this gate idea here, how minimal it is, and because there's a scene where the characters are talking through to one another. They're hiding, and just so many different locations here. But this, in looking at other productions, it gives me a chance to get a sense of how might these things be staged. This one mostly uses floor and a ceiling element. I like the cartooniness and the colors here. Again, a bit of a gate, but I like something a little more ornate. These are great cartoony walls, and I love the colors. Topiary, they actually found their way into my design. Um, but the one that I really liked the most was this one that used these hedges. How abstracted they are and turned into the structures themselves. I love this crazy thrust that comes out here. But the thing that really caught my eye was how this would open up and you'd have this crazy pink interior, because there's these scenes where the young ladies are looking out at this fellow who's come to town and he's courting these women, but he's just a liar. He can't help it. Fabricates everything. So this production was also intriguing with how stylized it is, the boldness of the colors, and just this circular element at center, and clearly a thrust arrangement there, but that great sort of worldly circle. But then I was kind of intrigued by, well, what's Paris actually look like where this is set? And because these characters are looking out of windows, what do the windows look like? So I started to research all these different styles and came upon so many different renditions of all those windows. I mean, here they are drawn, here are the realistic things, and I started to notice all the drapes at the windows, which got me thinking. I also did some research into period interiors, and here I love this use of fabric on the inside as well as the outside. The colors are very regal and very French, and then also I'm doing some research on furniture, so I know what to put in it. And then I started looking at more French windows, French doors, I guess. Got me thinking and seeing all these long, long drapes. And I started thinking maybe that could find its way into the set design. And I just kept Googling images and pulling them down. I love the way these are tied up. I'm not so fond of all the colors, but look at how these swags work. And this image in particular, you could see now how that found its way into the set. I liked the lighter gauzy fabric. And actually, I realized that we had all this white fabric in storage. And I was thinking, wow, we wouldn't even have to shop that. We could just tie it up, swag it, make it work. And you notice some of the forms that were in that set. That's kind of where that came from in this research here. I could look at these and go, ooh, I want to use that. I also like the way the lights are played in it, the little Christmas lights, and I just kept Googling more and more. Weddings is what I kind of got into. Wedding drapes somehow kind of stumbled on that. I love the different colors here, the different elements that are brought into it. And then I realized, oh my gosh, at weddings, that's right. You shoot different colors up a neutral colored drape. And even though these here are purple with some white, look what they're doing to these just by throwing blue light on it, or no color, some gobos on it. It'd be great. That would work well for all these different scenes. And I kind of kept going with the wedding thing to see if I wanted to throw other elements in, but I love the way these things hang together here. The way the swags kind of unite things. And then this sort of formed trees in my mind. I started to think, ooh, that's almost like a bit of a forest, because they are in a park outside. So I kind of was intrigued by that, the use of windows and other elements. And then the gates, I did some research and found images of different iron gates. These drawings, I think, came out of some books that I've got. And again, some sort of hopping between books and internet, but you can so easily scan and merge it with something that you've downloaded. They're also in the various props. They talk about French crullers, and so I don't know what a cruller is. So I did some research and made a page so we could create some props. So this is the model that I created. And what I did basically was to take some cardstock inside my little scale proscenium. I found some people and scaled them in, made my own little figures there. And then these swags I kind of drew on the cardstock, and I taped them up onto some battens, and I began to play with it quite loosely. I also had sketched some of this, but then to execute the model, I just sort of kind of pinned pieces in place to see how it might all hang. And you can kind of see how there's this long, thin drape, but to give this kind of tree-like form, but then have these other swags here. And what I was after were several buildings suggested, and then trees in a park, but it could also be so many other things with the site behind and a big white stage playing space. I reasoned that by projecting gobos on this, I could create that stronger sense of being outside in the park, but also that these are buildings, and by putting a window here, that could then suggest that those windows would open. And sure enough, the idea is that these drapes kind of swag out of the way, as you can see, and then behind it is exposed the pink. You see where I got that idea. And then there's this other swagged fabric, and also actors can enter underneath through this swag or straight fabric that has openings in it here. So as she's watching him down on the stage, you're aware of both those actors, but you get a sense of her in the building. And then when there's an interior, this fabric would be all bunched up off stage behind this, and it'll pull on a track, and then it'll bunch up and off it goes again. So that then creates an interior. So what's that look like in the actual production? Well, here it is out in the park. You can see in some of that light running down to kind of give a sense of these buildings, but it's a more neutral space. But here we are in an interior, and you can see how that color, the drapes, came out, and then some furniture is added. There are some window gobos here, so it feels like you're on the inside now of the house. Love the many layers of fabric. Now you're back outside, and here she is in her house. She has kind of an orange-ish, very warm dress, goes with the gold fabric, and then the window gobo and the leaves, and another gobo up there. And then there's a nighttime scene. Now you can see I've added the topiaries into that, but you can just kind of get a sense of how, how this same fabric, just with different lighting, gives you these very different scenes and effects. I love the stars with the gates there when he's out courting the women. Very romantic. And notice that the light designer has also illuminated the proscenium arch in some of this. Or this other interior, now she's over at her friend's house and they're looking out. Notice the slightly different color in the fabric there. So that they're viewing the guys down in the streets, and a little street sign has flown in for that. So that gives you an idea of how the research is used. I hope it's helpful.